Hello and welcome back to volume 2 of my TBR Vets challenge. Now if you haven't watched volume 1, here's a quick TLDR of how this works. I have loads of books that I've had for 100 years and I need to read them. Some of those books are from charity shops, some of those books were gifted to me from other people's unhauls, and some books I've just, like I said, had them for 100 years. I need to clear them off my shelves, and I need to clear them off my shelves if I want to put new books onto my shelf. I only did volume 1 2 months ago and I thought that's fine. I'll leave it a while. I probably won't buy many books. And then I did. And then I did buy a lot of books. But you'd think, well, Hannah, you were already in a deficit. You can't go out and buy more books when you haven't cleared from your last stack. Except I then unhauled nearly 100 classics from my parents' house. That it wasn't even like I'd forgotten they were there. I knew they were there. I just didn't know how many I had. I did a literature degree. I have a lot of classic books. I still have some. I've still kept a few, and I would like to keep collecting the black spined penguin classics. I don't need to collect the red, blue or white spines, so I'm not going to. And a lot of the books that I unhauled were those. But I then also bought a shit ton of books, just kind of over the last 2 months. I don't think I need to buy any more books for a while. Very much putting a stop to my spending for now. And I am still, spoiler alert, I am still in a bit of a deficit with regards to the books. Not a lot though. So I feel like you need to strap in and get comfy so that I can go through all of this. Now, as I've said in the previous video, again, if you haven't seen it, the TLDR is there are 4 ways that I can get rid of a book to put another book onto my shelf. I can DNF it. If I DNF 10 books, I can put a book onto my shelf. If I unhaul it, again, it's 10. If I read and keep them, I have to do that with 5 books to then put 1 book on my shelf. And for every TBR vet that I read and then unhaul, I get to put 1 new book on my shelf. So it's not too complicated, but it is a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. So we're going to start with the books that I read, unhauled, and then have replaced with new reads, because that is basically where I was able to cancel out the deficit from my last volume of TBR Vet Challenge. So in my last video I told you that I was going to read, unhaul and then replace Interview with a Vampire, and one of the books that was still left over from my last haul was A Court of Silver Flame. Now I'd already done this as an audiobook. I also have the hardback of this, but I wanted the paperback to go with the rest of my collection, so that was 1 on, 1 off. Then I read The Bad Beginning, which is the first in the Lemony Snicket series. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I did when I was a kid, so I unhauled it and I have replaced that with Pride, which is an LGBT BIPOC retelling of Pride and Prejudice. Then I read The Girl and the Goddess, which is the collection of poetry by Nikita Gill. Again, I enjoyed it, but I only gave it 3 stars. There's no point me keeping it. I am swapping that one for Sense and Second Degree Murder by Persia Price. This is the sequel to Pride and Premeditation, which I have not yet read, but I really love the covers of this and I love the idea of a Pride and Prejudice, or Jane Austen in general, themed murder mystery. I'm really excited for that one. I still think they're kind of historical fiction, but I don't know. I haven't read the first one, but I bought the second one anyway. Then I decided to unhaul Piecing Me Together. Now, technically I read this last year, but having read another Renee Watson this year, I've decided to be gentle with myself about it because I've decided I want to unhaul them. I just have other books on my shelves that I would rather recommend. Piecing Me Together was way better than the other book, which I will get to in a second, but it was a good excuse to put Grimrose Girls on my TBR. If you've seen any of my wrap-ups, you will know I've actually already finished. I really enjoyed it. Love is a Revolution was the one that I didn't enjoy as much. It only got 3 stars. And as I said, I've got other BIPOC YA books that are contemporary that I would rather recommend than both of those. I thought what Renee Watson was doing was really clever and I really liked the kind of general idea of them, but the execution wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. I buddy read this with Olivia and she felt the same. We both just felt like there were so many things that could have been pushed further and just weren't. And I have swapped that one for The Life and Medieval Times of Kit Sweetly, which is a contemporary romance but with medieval Renaissance vibes. I believe she works for like a Renaissance fair thing and I just really like that. Then I read and unhauled Baby Teeth. Now Baby Teeth was technically a new purchase, not a TBR vet, but I really wanted to put this book in particular on my shelf, so I did, and that is Tea Apollo Blue, which is a dark academia novel with just the most stunning inner pages and front cover. I'm just obsessed with it. It's all about the Oxford art scene. An Oxford scholar basically has a breakdown and then falls into a gay relationship, and it sounds wild, and I'm really excited for this one. I couldn't not put it on. So when I unhauled that one and another one, I used it as a perfect excuse. Not technically a TBR vet, but a fair swap, I think. As I said, I also swapped out The Deepest Breath, and I swapped that one for Wedding Crasher by Mia Souza, which is another wedding-based romance. She wrote The Worst Best Man, and I adored it. I gave it 5 stars, and I'm really excited about this one because it's bigger, and I just want more of her writing. I want more of her energy, and I'm really excited to get into this one. I've actually TBR'd it already, and I'm TBRing it again because I've just run out of time. It's not even like I didn't have the inclination for it. I just ran out of time, so I'm really, really excited to get to this one. I then unhauled River Enchanted, and again I've allowed it because that was an Illumicrate book, and whilst not technically a TBR Vet, an expensive book that was really boring, like so very boring. So I swapped that one for Witchlings, which is a Latinx middle grade fantasy, which gives me kind of a Mari and the Night Brothers vibes. And I'm just really excited about it. It looks really cute. There's friendship, there's magic. It's going to be wonderful. Then I read and unhauled The Paris Apartment. And again, this was not a TBR Vet. This was a new book. And it was also really fucking boring. So I wanted to swap a new book onto my shelf in lieu of that one because it was so disappointing. I swapped in You Truly Assumed, which is a BIPOC contemporary, and I'm really excited for this one. This one I think is going to be really sad and a real kind of like powerful moment, which is exactly the opposite of what The Paris Apartment was. I then buddy read The Hazelwood with Lizzie, which was a TBR Vet, and I have since unhauled the other 2, but we'll get there for that one. Read it, finished it, and I put Say No to the Dress onto my TBR. I hated this book, so I'm now unhauling it again, and instead I am putting on the Agathas, because that's what deserves to be on my TBR. So read and unhauled straight into this one, which is where this young girl is obsessed with Agatha Christie and then finally gets her chance to be Agatha Christie and solve her own murder mystery. I then read the collection of poetry. The Mermaid lost her voice in this one, or gets her voice back in this one, which was the 3rd in the Amanda Lovelace trilogy of poetry. It was fine. It was fine, I just didn't want to keep it, and I have swapped it for something a lot more adorable, which is the Tea Dragons Festival, which is the sequel to the Tea Dragon Society. This is a super cute BIPOC and disability rep graphic novel, has LGBT themes as well, and just I'm really excited to get to this one. The first one was so cute, and it was one of those ones where I tried it because so many booktubers really like that. Like, they really like that graphic novel, and I was like, I'm sure it's probably just falling into like 1,000 different tropes we've already heard before. Yes, but it is well loved for a reason. Like, it's such a beautiful graphic novel, and I couldn't help but pick up volume 2. I then read and unhauled How Your Story Sets You Free, which is a very, very short little non-fiction that was kind of meant to be like part motivational post, part kind of like advice for being a writer. It was not great. So I swapped that one for The Unhoneymooners, which I have already read, and I gave 5 stars, so we'll be keeping this. I hate the cover, but the rest of it is great. I then read Homebody, which is by Rupi Kaur, and I've had that for ages, so I decided to unhaul it. I was never going to reread it. I had read it pretty recently, so I'm including it, and I swapped that one out for Working Hard or Hardly Working, which I did also manage to get for buy one get one half price from Waterstones. This is a non-fiction about working productively and not beating yourself up if you're not working productively, which I need to read about because I am very hard on myself if I don't feel like I've had a super productive day. So I feel like, and also shiny. Bonus points for being shiny always. I then decided to unhaul Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which again I read last year, was never going to reread, but I'm counting them as read and unhauled. That one, we are moving on The Matrix, which is a historical fiction about warriors in France, and Firefly, Big Damn Hero. It could not be further away from what I've swapped them for, but I really enjoy the idea of both of these. I loved Firefly the series, and I love female warriors, so I feel like they're a fair swap. I then read and unhauled William Blake's Songs of Innocence and Experience. I didn't even bother putting this one on Goodreads because I studied those poems, so I do know them pretty well, and I was like, it doesn't even need to count towards this year's TBR goal. I just wanted to clear it from my shelves so that I could put a new book on, and I have swapped onto that one another Greek myths book because I couldn't resist another shiny one, and I've really been enjoying listening to like Natalie Haynes versions of the Greek myths, and this is another female gaze Greek myth retelling. I also read a collection of poetry from Maya Angelou at around like December time, so I'm counting that one, as well as my Wilfred Owen poetry that I read at the end of last year, my Penguin book of World War poetry, and I think there was also a Simon Armitage one, but I haven't counted that one for some reason. So that's 3 sets of poetry to put 3 new books on. So when I went to Yelk, I obviously got myself quite a few books, but I'm using this as an excuse to put these books on my TBR. So we have The Darkening, which I'm really excited about. This is a sapphic Asian fantasy. We have The Silver Chain, which is a novel in verse, and we have This Vicious Grace, which was a fairy loot pick, and I'm not gonna lie, the moment I saw the description I got really excited. I did get this on NetGalley as an ebook, but I didn't get to it in time, so I'm excited that I will finally be able to read it and review it for NetGalley, and therefore increase my score on NetGalley. I then read an Unhauled Airhead by Meg Cabot. I've been doing a reread of Meg Cabot books, and this was just not it for me. It's not even in the top 10 of my favourites of this one. I'm not even sure I want to keep on with the series, so it is already gone. I will wrap it up at some point, but I did not enjoy it. I have swapped onto my shelf from that one When Women Were Dragons, which is by Kelly Barnhill. I'm really excited to read this one because I've read her middle grades and they were super cute, and I think this is either YA or adult, but it just looks really, I don't know a lot about it, but it just looks beautiful. And then finally I read and unhauled Pizza Girl, which was a TBR vet because I've had that for 100 years. I actually bought that book even before I had my bookshop. That's how long I've had it. So I did read it, it was fine, but I don't want to keep it. I was swapping onto that The Madwoman's Ball, which is just the most stunning hardcover I've ever seen. It is a novella, but it is about women in Paris who are kind of in an asylum, but once a year they are kind of bid on at this ball, and it's really dark, and it's a translated novel. It looks wild, and I'm really excited for this one. And I needed that one on my own TBR in time for Gothtober, because that is one of the books that I would love to have on my Gothtober TBR. So now's the part where we get rid of literally 80 books that I decided I just didn't want to read. I was never going to reread them, and these are all TBR vets. These are all books that I was like, can't do it. But for every 10 books, I'm able to put 1 book onto my shelf. So for the first 10, we had The Stories of English, Beginning Theory, The Fight for English, The Basics Language, Blue Remembered Hills, DNA, The Night Country, which, as I said, was immediately unhauled. I think I read like 5 pages of that one. The Princess and the Queen of the Amanda Lovelace one, which I'd read previously, which I could have been sneaky about. And the Simon Armitage poetry collection, which I mentioned earlier. I didn't realise I just straight up unhauled it. I obviously didn't bother reading it. So for that one, I will be swapping obviously 1 book on, and that is The Final Strife, which is a high fantasy novel, and this is the Waterstones edition. I just couldn't wait to get my hands on this one. I know next to nothing about it except that it's a Harper Voyager one. It's going to be intense, it's going to be high fantasy, and the editor on this is someone whose career I've been following quite closely because I tend to love the books she works on. For the next 10, we have Metamorphosis, The Communist Manifesto, We All Fall Down, which was the Illumicrate one. I just unhauled that immediately. I don't need it in my life. A collection of Shakespeare's sonnets, Periodic Table of Feminism, Treasure Island, The Crucible, The Kite Runner, Turn of the Screw, and The Castle of Otranto. And the book that's going on my shelf in their stead is The King is Dead by Benjamin Dean. I'm really excited about this one. This is the same author who did Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow, but this is a YA novel, and I'm really intrigued by it. And again, it's the Waterstones edition. Then I got rid of 2 copies of Regeneration, an orange cover copy and the film adaptation copy. One which had my annotations in, and one that I found as a charity copy and thought just looked nicer. I'm not going to reread it. The Woman in White, Dr. Faustus and Other Christopher Marlowe Plays, The Origin of the Species, All Quiet on the Western Front, Goodbye to All That, Undertones of War, Misery by Stephen King, and Bag of Bones by Stephen King. And I'm not even going to get into why I'm unhauling Stephen King. I just know he's not the author for me. Onto my TBR goes Rapunzella, or Don't Touch My Hair, which is a Rapunzel retelling. I believe it's a contemporary, and it's all about black culture, black hair, etc. And I'm really interested in it. Then I had 2 sets of Eragon trilogy books, not the 4th one, apparently. I only wanted 6 Eragon books, but I wanted the same 3 twice. I had the hardback originals, and I had the reprints that went with the new book cover, which I read and hated. And I've tried to reread Eragon so many times that I just got shot of all 6 books. Don't need them in my life. Then I also got rid of a book called The English Language, the Mighty Boosh book, Milton's Paradise Lost, Thinking About It Only Makes It Worse by David Mitchell. And in lieu of those books, I will be putting on The X-Hex onto my TBR, which is a witchy rom-com. Then I had a romanticism textbook I was never going to reread, The White Princess, Trigger Mortis, To the Lighthouse, Huckleberry Finn, a collection of Yeats's poetry, or Yates poetry, one of those. Robert Browning's collection, The Best of Sherlock Holmes, which I've got another selection of Sherlock Holmes books, so I don't need that one. Women in Love, and Mrs. Dalloway. So loads of classics I was never going to reread again. But I hope someone out there really enjoys my annotations on those ones. I will be swapping onto my TBR Invisible Women, which is a non-fiction about women exposing the data bias in a world designed for men. This was a book I originally saw on Keris from Library of Keris's channel back when she wasn't a full-time teacher, and I'm really intrigued by it. Then I got rid of Native Son, Anna Karenina, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, The Scarlet Letter, Pulp Fiction, 500 Words You Should Know, Ulysses by James Joyce, Jude the Obscure, Philosophy of Inquiry, and Cranford, so that I could put on something way more interesting, which is Rizzio, a short story about Mary, Queen of Scots, watching someone she loves get murdered right in front of her. Like, this is going to be dark as shit, and I'm so excited. I really need to stop finishing every sentence with I'm so excited, but I am really excited. Can you see the theme here? Like, so many books that I got shot of. We then have Coming Up for Air, The Heart is a Lowly Hunter, Spilling the Beans on the Cat Pajamas, What Maisie Knew, Pirates by Celia Rees, as well as Sauvé and Witch Child by Celia Rees. I'm never going to reread her. I think I just need to break up with that author now. This Is Going to Hurt, which may hurt some of you knowing that I never read it, I just unhauled it. A book written by my lecturer Maggie G, which was just called A Collection of Letters, and A Slip of the Keyboard by Terry Pratchett. And I put on instead It Happened One Summer, which again, I read. I gave 5 stars. It was awesome. Then I, without reading, unhauled a gifted copy of Fable. I'm so sorry. I just don't think this book is ever going to be my thing, and I'm just not excited to pick it up at all. The Miniaturist, which would be a reread, but I just wasn't interested in rereading it anytime soon. Edgar Allan Poe Mysteries, The Prince by Machiavelli, The Art of Writing Essays, Fight Club, which I tried one chapter and couldn't get on with it. Anna Dressed in Blood, which is technically a DNF, but I moved it onto this one because, again, I tried. I did my best, but I'm unhauling it already. Name of the Wind, which my copy was just really gross. It was just really gross. Maybe I'll buy another copy in the future, but my copy was really gross. The Friendly Ones, which was signed by Philip Hensher, dedicated to me. Never read it. That sounded really smug. I don't mean it to sound smug. That sounded really rude, but it just wasn't my vibe at all. And then finally, On Writing by Stephen King. And I will be swapping onto my TBR, The Reluctant Vampire Queen, because this just looks sick. I then read and kept one book, which was She Who Became the Sun, and I'm carrying that over onto the books that I tried and DNF'd, because I've tried and DNF'd 9 books, and that would make it 10. So I tried The Khan, I tried Only on the Weekends, I tried The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, I tried Lady Mary, I tried The Good Girl Complex, I tried Love After Love, I tried Room Hate, I tried Margaret Atwood's The Surfacing, and I tried Margaret Atwood's The Year of the Flood. And my issues with Margaret Atwood's books have nothing to do with her writing and everything to do with the comments she made about language not being able to adapt or should not have to adapt to suit other people's sexualities, and how frustrating I found that. And I have swapped onto my TBR Stranger Things novel adaptation of between season 2 and 3, so there shouldn't be any spoilers, and I'm currently using Stranger Things stickers as my bookmark. No regrets. But I am enjoying this. The writing style's not amazing. I don't know if I'll keep it when I'm done, but for now, we'll just see how we get on. So when I said I was in a deficit, it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I currently still have Payback's a Witch, which I would love to get onto my TBR soon, because I have a vlog that I think would work with a couple of other books on this list. And I have The 6 Wives of Henry VIII by Alison Weir that I really want to read. I also have volume 2 of Lore Olympus, but it's up there somewhere. And I also have volume 2 of Violent Love. So I'm only 4 books in a deficit, which is better than it was last month, plus all of these books that I've bought. Leave me a comment down below. Which of these books do you think I should prioritise in a TBR? Have you bought any books recently? And if so, which one are you most excited about? Make sure that you click those links down below. Treat yourself to something from Waypoint. You don't even have to have read another book on your shelf to treat yourself, because buying a book from Waypoint helps support me and my content, and it's a little treat for you. Other than that, I hope you're having a nice day, and I'll see you next time.